Alrighty, what's up, y'all? Time for the next episode of We're Getting Rowdy. As you know, I'm Tyler McBee,
I'm Cooper Bell.
and here to talk about what just happened. It was a little bit of a slower week with Tennessee Athletics. Soccer had their final home game where they ended up coming out with the win.
SEC East champs.
Yep, came out with the win, and they are right now holding the ranked 2 seed heading into the SEC tournament, which should start off this coming weekend at that point for them. So it was a good game, especially for seniors Ren French and Aaron Gilroy to go out with the win on senior night, and Ren scoring the goal on senior night as well.
You always love to see on senior night your seniors go out with a win.
That is true, and seeing how much they've done here, Aaron being here really for 5 years, and then Ren being a true senior, it's a good thing seeing that.
Yeah.
And then volleyball, unfortunately, fell a little short, losing 3-0 against South Carolina. But
South Carolina's a good team.
Yeah, and still looking at it, they still have a young set of girls out there who we've spoken about before.
Mm-hmm.
When you lost the leadership from last year's team we have, these younger girls are just trying to take that next stride forward. And, I mean, yeah, volleyball was one of those sports that really got hurt the most with really only us playing 4 teams and, 8 games in total. So, nothing really for them this season.
Yeah.
So, you can't really necessarily even judge this season as an improvement year or not because of this more circumstances compared to, other sports who are getting a lot more games.
Yeah.
But
it's almost like basketball. You can't really get into your groove in 8 games.
Right, but at least thankfully, we know, we just use basketball as an example.
Yeah.
They'll have a lot more games on their schedule for this year. We have 9 non-conference games, so we have more non-conference games for basketball than volleyball had in their main season, and then really more than soccer had in their main season.
Yeah.
So those are 2 teams that I really would have loved to see how their performance would have been without the COVID year at that point, because seeing the strides these coaches have taken with these programs. And then another game that we have to all talk about, football. First half looked very promising.
Hey, I was having fun the first half, Just sitting there watching our offensive line go to work, watching Eric Gray go to work.
All those big holes that were opened up, you just saw so much for that run game, which is something we've needed to where we were wearing their defense down.
Yeah, and granted, Arkansas, their front 7 really isn't the best. They were talking about it during the broadcast. They only have 7 guys that they can sub in and out.
Yeah.
On the defensive line.
As opposed to us, where we have about 8 or 9 in reality that have gotten good, meaningful reps this year.
Yeah.
But I see your point on that. But I think it's just still, you see those strides you wanted to take at that point. And where we wore the more physical offensive line over their D-line, seeing them playing more physical over them.
At least in the
first half. It was good in the first half. And, in the first half, we had, before halftime, almost 21 minutes of total possession time at that point.
And I know, 7 minutes left to go in the second quarter, we already had over 100 yards on the ball. Rest of the ball.
Yeah, that we did. And it was just great because Eric Gray had a huge night. It kind of sucked to see when Ty slipped up. He kind of aggravated his ankle at that point because having those 2 could have had a big night out there. But then it was nice seeing some of the big carries for Jabari Small, the true freshman.
Yeah, and he's got some bursts. I like Jabari Small. He's gonna have a big career here. I
agree, and just again we've spoken this. His 5'10" stature makes him hard to tackle at that point. I think you could say a good comparison to him, he may not get as many touches as this kid, that Kansas State true freshman, who's only 5'8" for them. They're both very elusive, hard to tackle kids. You got to get the right angle on them, or you're not going to be able to get them at that point.
And a former Tennessee running back that Jabari Small kind of reminds me of, Rajon Neal.
Yeah, I can see that.
A little bit, because I remember watching Rajon. He was. I miss Rajon. He was a good running back.
I do too, and yeah, no, he definitely does have that little aspect of it. He's just the little bit harder to tackle type running back, and I remember Rajon Neal was that way, the little bit harder to tackle. But then, the second half, it just wasn't our night, and then it does suck that JG went down
Yeah.
and like when we had to switch in quarterbacks, and
Which I didn't get to see the play where he got hurt. So like, what happened?
from what I heard, like, and only saw like it at a little bit of a distance. They said the way he like went up and then he just came down and landed on his head, so he got checked for concussion and everything.
Okay.
So at this rate, would just based on how we've seen concussions happen here, I don't see him getting the start against A&M at this rate.
Either.
Just because I'm one, when you have a concussion, you got to protect those players.
Concussions
big time.
they may seem like a very small thing, but they are huge.
Because I look at the way when last year when we played Mississippi State, the way Brian Maurer landed on his head.
That was a scary injury.
It's like you just want to protect these kids at all costs. So definitely, if going into this coming week, if JG's not the starter, but then if he is able to at least maybe come in like third, fourth quarter and get some reps, I would rather see that a little bit, just if we need him.
Yeah.
But definitely, you got to keep this kid safe because concussions are no joke with everything that happens in football, and it's going to be interesting. I think at this point, people who are wanting Harrison Bailey might get to see a little bit more of him because I just don't know. At this point, we know Shrout didn't travel with the team, so now it's looking like it's going to most likely go between Bailey and Maurer for this week. That's just my opinion, but
who would you rather have, Brian Maurer or Harrison Bailey?
As much as I think Maurer, I would say right now, Bailey I think would be better in the long run, but just because Maurer's been in the system with us for a while and has a little bit more of a grasp on the playbook at that point. But I think overall, as like the pure like deep ball passer standpoint, I think that's more Harrison Bailey at that point.
And I think that needs to be our besides running the ball. Like obviously, running the ball is an offense's bread and butter, but in the passing game, we've seen the most success on play action and the deep ball
that we have.
So I think we need to start incorporating the deep ball a lot more.
I can agree to that. And then, just one other thing, like I noticed too, it's like looking at it, like I'm not going to use it as a full excuse. You could tell it definitely hurt without Alante out there too, where he didn't travel because, he's may have a few busted coverages every so often, but he just brings like a certain energy to that defense out there. And like, I still look at it. He was coming in, he played quarterback in high school, came in here as a wide receiver, and then in fall camp his freshman year, moves to defensive back at that point. So he's still a relatively young DB, but if you look, he is one of those guys, no matter what on the sideline, tries to get in everybody's ear, tries to get their heads picked up over like one bad play. But then, even also staying with the field of defensive backs, Schamberger didn't travel for undisclosed reasons, but there's so much speculation of what it could be, whether it's injury, COVID, or just people have known there's been issues where he is probably, like we've known, everybody's talked about he's been in Pruitt's, as they say, doghouse before with stuff. So I'm not trying to read into what it is because it could be anything at this point. So, but seeing where Theo Jackson actually stepped up pretty big, he had a big night for himself in that star spot where Schamberger usually was, and then. So I was kind of hoping to see, I thought at first Keyshawn Lawrence might have gotten the starting nod there, but I was okay with seeing Theo because I'll be honest, sometimes, I always forget he's there because, you don't hear as much about him, but when he gets in the game,
he makes plays.
He makes big plays for us at that point.
But I do want to see a little bit more Keyshawn Lawrence because, Pruitt's talked about him a lot, saying that he shows up to practice every day, works hard, and that he's a good ball player. So I want to see what he can do as well.
I do too, and I definitely want to see Slaughter take those next steps too. Another young defensive back who has shown sparks of he's there, but just hasn't quite mastered the defense yet to be the main guy out there.
Yeah.
Which again, you can't always expect a 18, 19-year-old kid to do that in their true freshman year. Some can pick up on it quickly, some can. Like, I'm just going to use Henry T as an example. He's one of those special players who can just is like one of the most instinctive guys out there. Like Pruitt said, that is one of the kids he would trust to call out the plays for the defense as a true freshman.
Yeah.
Just because of how like his football IQ is. Not knocking on anybody else, you know, but it's just some kids can easily grasp a system a lot more than others. Some it takes them a whole year in the system to finally learn it, and it's just based on how like does the game speed of transitioning slow down for these people.
And here you mentioned Henry T. I want to talk about him for a little bit. You know how much I love Henry T.
Oh yeah.
You know, every Vol fan loves Henry T. But if there is one glaring issue that I have about him, he has got to work on his pass coverage, because there were multiple times in the game yesterday. I remember I can't remember. I think it was in the third quarter. He bit so hard on a play action, and that left the middle of the field wide open for their tight end. And it was a gain of like 30 yards.
Yeah.
If Henry T doesn't bite on the play action, I mean, maybe they complete the ball, maybe it's a 5-yard gain, but 5 yards is a heck of a lot better than 30 yards.
I can agree to that, but
and we've seen that multiple times this year where he bites on the play action. I mean, granted, his primary thing is stopping the run. He's probably one of the best run stoppers that we have on this team.
I agree.
But if you want to take that next step and be like the all SEC linebacker, you know, that you see from Rashaan Evans at Alabama, or who graduated from Alabama, and just people from the past, you got to lock down that pass coverage.
That you do. And then the one thing I will say this though, I remember thinking back to his recruitment when he was at De La Salle. I think he went on the inside a little bit, but he would, you know, usually most of your top linebackers are listed as outside linebackers at that point, because they're usually more your pass rushers they need at the high school level to get to the ball. So that's why we know he's so good at run stopping, because I remember watching his games at De La Salle, and that's what they used him more as, an outside backer at that time, because you could have said, like, he could have still done both in high school, but you usually put some of your best players at those certain spots. Like, that's why you see just so many guys needing to learn a new position at that point.
And it's nothing to get concerned about. Like, it's just watching film and just, you know, getting more comfortable. Like, next year, I don't, like, you're still going to see it some. Like, even the best NFL linebackers will bite on a play action. So, I mean, you're always going to have that. But, I mean, it'll definitely get better. So, I'm not worried about it.
I'm not either, because I even think back to some of the great linebackers in recent, like, you know, within the last, like, Maben, A.J. Johnson, Kurt, you know, who were all great at linebacker, but had a few whiffs on certain plays like that. It's like we've always said, you can't expect a kid to play 100% perfect every time, because we're all human. Nobody can go through a game without making mistakes at that point.
Now, I will say, Henry T, he knows how to stop a screen.
He does.
He knows how to stop a running back screen.
He knows how to read that stuff quickly. And just looking at pass coverage linebackers, again, it's us looking to the future. We got one that's committed right now in 5-star Terrence Lewis, who literally, if you saw his tweets, like, as we're recording this on Sunday from today, like, he was saying, I'm ready to help get there and make a change. So he's showing, no matter how this season's going, he's not wanting to waver on that commitment.
And that's the type of guy that we need on our team. We need a guy that's, you know, all in or all out.
I agree. And if you look, pretty much all of our top-rated commits, like every interview they've done, they said, we just want to get to Tennessee and help make that difference. They said, if that's our class that does it, that's even better for us at that point.
And Kadon Salter, for example, he's come out multiple occasions. He said, I'm staying, and, you know, he had a heck of a game.
6 total touchdowns, 400, over 400 all-purpose yards, 200 rushing yards.
For a quarterback.
Let's not forget, a kid from the opponent's student section was hollering at him through a megaphone, trying to, tease him. Lessons learned.
Yeah.
You don't call out certain players like that.
Yeah, no, you don't call out a future D1 quarterback at an SEC school.
No, and I can see why the coaches are so high on him, which that's making me think for the coming spring.
It's going to be a heck of a quarterback.
Yeah, not yes, JG could technically come back a year, but let's say he doesn't at that point. You still have Maurer, who we know is a hell of a passer.
Yep.
Shrout, who if he starts working better, he still knows how to throw a ball pretty well though. But
sometimes his decision making isn't the best.
Yeah, but again, a young quarterback who came from out in California against a lot of tough competition too. But still, I mean, I always say if they're good enough to make it to a Division I level, they have to have some talent.
Yeah, they have to have something about them.
And we've seen when even if it's in practice or just air raid stuff, how far Shrout can throw down at that point.
And last year against South Carolina, we saw flashes of that, especially on that deep 41-yard pass he had to Marquez.
Yeah. And then, so just looking at how that quarterback battle could be in the spring, it could be anybody's at this point. Even me saying this now, it wouldn't shock me if Salter could come in and be the guy at that point. Because, you just never know how a player does until they get here.
You never know. But another thing about our next year, we got to have a quarterback that Jim Chaney can trust. Because I feel like right now his play calling isn't the best.
It's not, and it's a little bit like everybody says about. It's just if some of the younger quarterbacks can't get the guys lined up properly, you can't really throw in all those wrinkles at that point. Yeah. And if some of those, even your veteran quarterbacks, some playbooks you have to admit are just so complicated that only some of your top end quarterbacks, like the guys like the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Breeses, the Aaron Rodgers, can fully break down everything. Because if you look at just some of those playbooks, some of these are almost like NFL style playbooks too at that point. And it's going to be hard for any young kid to try to get that down.
Sure.
Especially what I say as a student athlete, on top of them having all of the classwork they have to do, everything around football as well. Mm-hmm. How much time you got to look, they've got to make a bunch of time to try to go in it on their own, but none of us ever see what a day in their life is actually like. So everybody who's why can't these younger quarterbacks grasp it? Well, we don't know how much they're doing too.
And another thing about the offense, and it's something that we've said, I'm pretty sure we've talked about it every episode, but we got to get production from our tight ends. Because
we do.
If you look back at Georgia, whenever Jim Chaney was offensive coordinator at Georgia,
and he had Isaac Nada there.
Isaac Nada. He loved using Isaac Nada, and I don't even think Isaac Nada's in the NFL. So it's not even that.
I think he is, but he's just more of a reserve role for him.
But it's not even the fact that we have to have this
we don't have
top 10 tight end.
We don't have to have a guy like what Jason Witten did here at UT.
We just need somebody that's going to give us some production.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't have to be like the Jason Witten level of production, but I'm just thinking back to the last tight end Chaney had here of Michael Rivera. Get us somebody who can be that pass catcher but also the blocker, which I know you and me have talked about. I see that we both see that in Hudson Wolf at that point, and then Miles Campbell, when he adds the size, be able to help block more, but being that flex out tight end at that point.
And it's really hurt not having Austin Pope this year.
It is, and I think it's though good that they're still not letting him play because coming back from a back surgery where I think it was a slip disc or something around that, so. That you got to really be careful with, too, because when it comes to talking about back injuries, those are the career killers at that point. I've seen so many pros lose their career over a back injury at that point.
And I don't think people realize how intensive a slip disc surgery is.
Yeah.
If there's one wrong move, dude's paralyzed.
Yeah, and he may have been cleared to go, but losing all the conditioning that he did, he's a lot further behind everybody.
Yeah.
And I look at it like Balin Buchanan, who had that spinal stenosis, right now, the narrowing of the spine. Yeah. That's why he's not playing this year because they were keeping him out to monitor that. And I hate to see it on these younger kids at that point because you never want to see a young kid because I think back, look, that's how Cooper Manning lost his career early. So,
and if those of you who don't know who Cooper Manning is, he is the brother of Peyton and
the eldest brother at that point. But yeah, no, and then like I know we're venturing off from our game a bit, but looking at going back to our game, the one position group that I wish we could have seen more from was our receivers. But just seeing how well Arkansas's DBs have played this season, I totally understand why we ran the ball like 60 times in the game. And when I would see on social media people were getting upset with it, but I'm like, when most of our runs, you could see Eric Gray was getting a first down on like what, maybe every 3-4 runs at that point.
It seemed like in the first half he was breaking like 7-yard runs almost every time he touched the ball.
Yeah, so it's like, why stop that at that point?
Yeah, going back, we had 50 rushes last night for 185 yards.
Yeah, that's a lot at that point. And then I wish, like, we still need to see a little bit of a step up in our receivers at that point. Just watching the game, we always talk about needing that separation. I just did not see that separation our receivers needed, like, to do it. Yeah, okay, you could try to throw it, but we don't have I don't think a lot of the guys are officially ready for those 50-50 ball matchups yet. Malachi Wideman, I think, has still got a ways to go before he's officially ready to do that, like, every game. Palmer's one of the only ones who I think could really physically do it.
Yeah.
Brandon can as well, but, you know, they know what those two kids can do for us, so they're going to always keep them on lockdown at that point.
Yep. And Jalen Hyatt, he's not your type of receiver to go up and get it. He's going to be the one to burn you.
He is, and sometimes I think like we've said before, we just need to focus on some of them deep shots to Hyatt. But it's going to be hard. It's kind of hard for me to think of some game balls to go to. It was, but I figured them out this morning.
And I think we can both agree on offense.
Eric Gray, For defense, I want to give it a co-game ball to Theo Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And Kavon Bennett, who stepped up and had a big game. Like, after him having a few off games, you know, yes, you could say it's only Arkansas, but, I mean, even when he was getting, like, usually double-teamed and not able to do much, him coming in, he had, 2 sacks, I think I remember seeing?
Something.
He had a good game for himself where Bennett, like, came on strong for the edge rushers. So that's why, like, I would say, I would give a game ball to...
Yeah, Kavon Bennett had 2 sacks.
Yeah, so that's, like, why I was going with the game ball for them. And then special teams, I want to give it to Samaglia.
Yeah.
Just seeing him, you know, come out of the rut from the earlier point for missing a field goal in South Carolina, missing one against Missouri as well, you know. It's just good to see Samaglia back to what we all know he can do. Yeah. And you have to admit, that 50-yard field goal of his, beautiful kick, straight down the middle, just enough power to where I guarantee you could have kicked him back maybe 3-4 more yards, and he still would have cleared it at that point with the way that kick looked.
Oh yeah, and the 48-yard kick, those were nice too. And it's not like these were chip shot field goals either. Like these are big time kicks.
And for like what Pruitt said, I didn't even realize he was had like a pulled knee or just like a sore knee from earlier until today. I learned that from just seeing it, and I was like,
news to me.
So just seeing that, I was gonna say you can't really use those as an excuses, but that just shows, I think, also the toughness of Samaglia out there to not let it bother him, and then to kind of like come close to it, starting to wrap things up a little bit. We'll finish up here in a little bit, but looking up. We're set to host A&M this coming Saturday.
Number 5, Texas A&M.
Another 3:30 kick.
Yep. Not looking forward to this one.
It's going to be interesting, especially seeing how A&M has come along at one point. But, you know, I'm still going to say I'm not willing to give up hope yet on this game because we just don't know what's going to happen between each week at that point.
That's why they play the game.
Exactly. Like we've seen any teams be able to get beat at any moment.
Yep. And I'm nervous about Kellen Mond. He is
I am too.
Heck of a quarterback. He's only thrown 2 interceptions this year.
Yeah,
And if you look at the teams that they've played, that's big time.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw something today where he is now like cemented up into like the top, like I think 5 quarterbacks in A&M history at that point with passing touchdowns too.
Probably.
Like he is. It was something, I remember seeing. I didn't get a chance to fully, read it, but I just saw a quick glimpse of he's put his name up there with all the big boys from A&M, which doesn't shock me seeing how he's playing now at that point. But
he's very good.
I just remember used to thinking he had his highs and his lows. Like I remember kept saying he played a little bit too inconsistent for me to think I was really worried about A&M. But this year something has clicked with him. Like that's where everybody calls Jimbo Fisher that quarterback whisperer.
It almost seems like after the Alabama game, which they ended up losing that game, but they had a switch flip in there.
They did. Something just clicked for all of those boys at that point.
Because I'm pretty sure either 1 or 2 weeks prior, they had a tough game. Like they almost lost to Vanderbilt.
They did. They almost lost to Vanderbilt. And they got blown out by Alabama.
Yeah, and then, 2 weeks later they beat Florida?
Yeah, so it's, again, crazy season, to say the least. So
it's 2020. Anything can happen.
Definitely their passing attack is something we really need to watch out for.
And their running game. They're just a complete team on offense.
They are. Like, defensively, I haven't really paid attention to them as much to really know how they are. But I think if our offensive line can play a full game like they did the first half against Arkansas with, using the strength we know our boys have, we just got to make sure we can run it down their throats at that point.
Their Texas A&M, their defense is allowing around 338 yards a game, with that being 242 pass yards a game and around 95 rushing yards a game.
So that could be something good about opening up the passing attack for us, especially, that's just an average of all their games, but still giving up, over almost 250 yards per game through the air is not something good at all in reality, because that's just asking for a lot of those top-end quarterbacks to come in, just have a field day at that point.
But, all right, let's preview it a little bit. So, ESPN gives Texas A&M a 78% chance to win and us a 21% chance to win. I'm honestly surprised that it's not more, to be honest.
Yeah, just seeing how we've played in there, I can agree to that. But I think they're also just looking from a standpoint, you got to look, we're at home as well. So I think that's going to help weigh with us a little bit more. And I think just seeing the little bit of progressions we've made a little bit. Even though the games haven't always been there for us, just looking at everything overall, I think is what's helping bring that up for us.
And it's like we touched, Kellen Mond, hell of a quarterback, he's got 1,468 yards, like we said, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the season. Jarrett Garantano, we all know about him. But it's like we said earlier, we don't know if he's going to play this week, so we're either
I don't think we're going to know until Monday, until Pruitt's press conference about how severe the concussion was, or if it really was one at that point, because sometimes these kids just land on their heads and they don't get one, but they just hold them out the rest of the game just to prevent something from coming up later, because I've seen some concussions on kids not appear until the next day at that point, so you just got to wait.
And then Texas A&M's running back, Isaiah Spiller, he's a good running back, 643 yards on the season with 5 touchdowns, 6.2 yard average per carry. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Well, he'll match up again. I think it's gonna be interesting. Knowing how much they're good at stopping the run, I think we'll see a lot more of Jabari Small over Ty Chandler just with the nagging ankle. I don't think they're going to want to risk Ty coming in, and really hurting himself even more. We'll probably see Ty maybe a little bit, but I think Small's going to get a lot more of the carries, but him and Eric got to really step it up this game.
do you think that this is the week that we see D Beckwith?
I'd be willing to say yes. I know he traveled with the team, so the last few away games he hadn't because of his injury at that point, and so I think we're gonna start. I'm willing to think we might start seeing a few more of the younger guys, but this is also just based on how they've done with coming back from injuries at that point, because I know D's was an ankle injury at that point, and as a running back, you can't rush those kind of returns at that point.
They got to plan, do all that stuff. So, yeah, you don't want to rush any lower body injury. Receiving yard or receivers, their receivers don't really stand out all that much. But that's just because Kellen Mond does a great job of spreading the ball around.
That he does. And, it would be almost like if if the way our offense could really look with the air raid, I don't think we would have had that. Ours would be looking the same at the receiving core because we got a lot of talented guys. I think back to even one of Dobbs' years, where we spread it around so much. Yeah, Malone still may have been our leading receiver, but you still saw so many offensive guys.
Because back then you had Josh Malone, Juwan Jennings,
you had Josh Smith.
Ethan Wolf was there, and you had Alvin Kamara and Jalen Hurd coming out of the backfield.
Yeah, you had a young Marquez Callaway and Brandon Johnson who showed a bit there for him. You just had
and Tyler Bird.
You had so many guys to where, of course, you didn't have one big receiver up there. And I even think back to one of other Chaney's years when we had Justin Hunter, Michael Rivera, Zach Rogers, Derrick Rogers. It wasn't just always to one of them every game.
Yeah.
One may have had the better game each week, but it wasn't the same one every game at that point. They would spread it out so much. And that's one thing you can definitely say I love about Chaney. He gets it to all his playmakers. Yeah. He doesn't want to focus on just one guy. He wants to get everybody the ball. And as an O coordinator, people always forget this. They look at some of his play calling. He utilizes the players in his system to their strengths at that point. He's not going to make a kid do something they're not good at. And that's one of my still high praises of why I'm still not willing to be out on Jim Chaney either.
I'm not either. It's been a rough year for both sides of the ball.
It has.
I say let's watch it next year. If we can have a different quarterback in there, see what he can do, and like we said with our tight ends coming in, see what our offense can really be like whenever we have his players. Because right now he's playing with players that he didn't recruit.
There's some he might have recruited, but
there's some, but
I look back to, we had Harrison Bailey commit before Chaney was even hired at that point, so he didn't have a chance to build the relationship. Maurer was already here when Chaney was hired at that point. So, you could say some of the kids in the 2020 class were for his offense, at that point, your Jalen Hyatts, your Jimmy Holiday, your Jimmy Callaway type guys. But, you still got to look at everything as a whole. Yeah. But, again, I'm still, I said, not really, you see a lot of fans on social media trying to say they're already done on this whole staff. I'm every staff's going to have their hiccups like this, because I made a comparison today. I'm not saying Pruitt's going to be the next Dabo, but it was year 5, people were screaming for Dabo's head at Clemson, and then he got Deshaun Watson going into his 6th year, and then look at where he's at now. Now they love him at that point. So I'm not trying to say he's going to lead us to that. I would love to see Pruitt do that, but this is where Pruitt, we all know, inherited a dumpster fire.
It was the worst roster in the SEC.
Trey Smith was, I think, literally the only O-lineman over 300 pounds on our roster at that time. Yeah. Just seeing what he's done with their body transformations and everything, and getting these kids in the right area for them. That's why I'm still not, I'm still behind our coaching staff.
I'm 100% behind Pruitt. I think there could be some rearranging done at certain position groups, but I still think Pruitt's the guy. He knows football. So
he does, and he's a like a no nonsense type coach. Like he's gonna just tell you how it is at that. And what I still love is everything. He never points fingers to anybody. He will take the blame himself and try to pull the heat off anybody else at that point. And that's the type of guy you want leading your programs.
But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to next year to see what our offense can look like and see what our defense will look like. You know, we got a couple big time recruits coming in.
Yeah. And it's gonna be like everybody figured, probably a rough year. But we should still be thankful that at least we're getting football. Yeah. That's the one thing I'm still looking at. Yes. But yeah, if we want to try to do a quick score prediction,
you go first. I gotta think about this for a second.
I'm gonna say, I hope I'm wrong with this. 35-21 A&M at that point. I would love to be wrong and us come out.
You're being more generous than I am.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give us some credit, though, at that point. Because we've shown our sparks to where we can do it.
I'm going to say 45-17.
All right, yeah. So it's going to be an interesting game. But, again, I think a good win like this can help turn things around for us going in. We got to get those guys clicking at that point.
We just got to get back to winning.
That we do, but other than that, I think not else a lot with UT coming up.
So, basketball season starts in 20 days?
November 25th is the first home game against UNC Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken.
So less than 20 days.
So, yeah, that'll be here soon, and, so there's going to be a lot more to talk about come basketball.
I'm ready for basketball.
Well, especially because, when we have, 2 or 3 games a week in total, counting men's and women's, we're going to have a lot to talk about with the podcast, for sure.
For sure.
But then, just last little thing before we wrap it up. Give me a player you want to see from us have a breakout game for A&M, and I'll give you one of mine.
If Ty Chandler doesn't get his carries, I want to see Jabari Small go for at least 50 yards.
All right, I'll give you that. And for me, I'm going to go on the opposite side of the ball. I want to see more still of – I want to actually see Tamarian McDonald get some big reps this game. I want to see how he's progressed after that injury. So I want to see Tamarian get something come in big this coming game.
Me too.
But other than that, I think that wraps it up for tonight. Just as always, hope everybody has a good Big Orange week. And as always, remember, go Vols.
Go Vols.